Ridge Wetlands Agency. Today is Wednesday, March 20th. First agenda item, All Habitat Services LLC, 16 Sunbrook Road, application for dredging of private residential pond. Is there somebody here representing them? If you'd step up and sign in and give us an overview.
They don't have a sign-in sheet, but that's okay.
Okay, can I sit here?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
That's the chair.
Good evening. David Roach
While he's talking.
with All Habitat Services, Brantford, Connecticut, appearing on behalf of the owner, 16 Sunbrook Road. We were contacted after a report was issued by the Conservation District, and it had some recommendations for maintenance of a residential pond on this property. Primarily to remove sedimentation that had accumulated in the pond is affecting storage and causing an overflow condition and some poor water quality. There's also a number of invasive species around the property that they had also recommended managing as part of this recommendation, the report. And so All Habitat is an ecological management firm. These are the types of services that we perform. So we submit this application to propose this dredging that they've recommended of the pond and management of the invasive species. And then there are some recommendations as far as the site for access, and that's where we would be operating within the 100-foot buffer of the wetlands that are adjacent to the pond. So in addition to the invasive species management recommendations, the dredging process is a hydraulic dredging operation. We'd be pumping a mud slurry with water, and it would be injected into a geotextile containment bag where it will dewater. The sediment will remain inside the bag, and then clear water will flow out through the pores of the bag, return that back into the pond system. And then once the dredging operation is complete, the spoils in the bag would spend time sitting, dewatering, and then once they've sufficiently dewatered, it could take a couple of weeks, depends on temperature and a few other things, time of year. We'd open the bag, and then the suggestion has been to reinforce and stabilize the bank of the pond. The distal end has a kind of an earthen berm, and we would try to enhance that earthen berm. There's been some erosion of that berm from the overflow of the pond, and so we'd like to enhance that all outside of the wetland area, and then plant that with a stabilization planting mix of herbaceous seeding and shrubs as, again, the report recommends. And to whatever extent there is excess sediment volume that would need to be removed, that would be hauled off site. But the idea would be to create some additional stabilization on the bank, some micro topographic contouring, things that would be very suitable for wildlife, and then some assortment of wetland seed mix with pollinator benefits and other ecological services to stabilize the fresh soil that's been placed on the bank.
Seems like a rather thorough plan, very detailed. Let's seat Jean for Bob, and Renee, and Andre for David. Anybody have any questions, issues, comments? Yes.
Yes.
Stephen.
My throat's quick. Do you have some estimate as to how much material has to come out of the pond?
So the
Have I
estimate,
missed it?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's in there, 600.
See, I'm sorry, I just didn't read enough to understand, but
yes, it's hidden in there somewhere.
Yeah.
No, we're estimating from our survey methods,
yeah.
approximately 400 yards of material is in the pond, we'll call in situ.
Yeah.
Now, that's loosely consolidated,
It'll be less
much of
than
it
that
is
when you try to
flocculated, it's just suspended. So when it goes into the bag, the weight of the material itself and the water weight presses down. So it effectively presses all the water out of the bag. And we would expect, I mean, very conservative numbers, we generally see about half, and depending on ratios of sand, till, this is highly organic, so we'd expect that it could be consolidated down to as much as 10% of the original volume. So we may only wind up with about 40 yards when it's all done and dried out. If that's the case, it will very easily be incorporated into the bank reinforcement. If we don't achieve that kind of consolidation number, then we may run out of, room and places to use it, at which point we would take it off-site. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, just like to say I was very impressed with your plan. Your application materials were very well presented, and so I wanted to compliment you and your organization on that. A couple of things. The Southwest Conservation District wondered if the access for this project was going to be good over Area A. Is that, can you confirm that?
That
you'll?
was actually their recommendation, was to use it. It looks like it's an existing access. It seems, from our soil evaluation, was fortified with some gravel. There's a fallen tree and some invasive woody species like multiflora rose. So they recommended removing the fallen tree and then mowing the rose. And so we would really just mow that access area and then use that to bring the equipment in and out and do our haul.
Good.
We'll stabilize it with a tracking pad and all the best management practices if be appropriate for that. And then when we're done, we'll clean it up and plant it on the way out with a seed mix.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're talking about the same area and that we didn't need to contemplate another access that could have impacts that would interest us. Now we don't have to talk about that. Another thing too is, I'd like, was again complimentary of the fact that you're going to test that soil as was recommended by the Southwest Conservation District for contaminants. So Commission appreciates that extra effort. Tell me, does your plan contemplate, according to the Southwest District's recommendation, the construction of a forebay to trap sediment before it gets into the pond next time?
So, yeah, that's an interesting, and it may just be that the period that we're in right now as far as the hydro period. We have done forebays, and we've actually used, sometimes we'll use the geotextile bag and fill it and sink it and create a forebay. We can actually plant vegetation in the bag itself, so it creates a littoral shelf as well, so that things will flow over filter. But I think all of the times that we've been there, the flow of that water course is pretty intense. There's a good bit of velocity, and again, it may just be that we're in a very wet cycle at the moment. But we have not, even when you would think of a normal low flow period, it still seems to have a pretty good volume of water. The other challenge for us is ensuring that the water quality is not degraded. So we'll have a turbidity curtain on that outflow where it flows under the bridge and out. But I don't know that the forebay, at this point, from what we looked at, it may not be as effective as perhaps when they looked at it. I'm not quite sure what those conditions are. So that was kind of a conversation to have. But typically the forebay does sediment capture, and it creates it in a smaller confined area, easier to manage, less disruption on the rest of the pond. But I think we'd kind of look at the cycle for that and see if it's warranted.
Okay, so, well, that's, let's fold that into my next point, and that is there a maintenance plan that you'll propose for the pond area, which might have included a forebay or something like that? But so let's strip out the fact that there may not be a forebay based upon your professional opinion. Is there some kind of a maintenance plan to the area?
So we'll continue the invasive species. We'll take a few years to get the invasive species program at least under control in terms of management and to a early detection, rapid response level. And the owner is committed to managing the pond for quality and aesthetics. So we will have a regular program for the pond as needed.
For sedimentation, elimination or avoidance of?
We would monitor that. I don't know, so I don't have a lot of history of that, but typically what we find is large contributors would be legacy road sand, and which is not really a process anymore. Upstream construction, large development, failed sedimentation, erosion controls. Those are typically things that we would see. So I think we would monitor this, and that would be typically if you can get 20 to 30 years of a pond life cycle before you have any real sedimentation issues, then that's pretty good in terms of a standard. If it were to occur much quicker than that, then there would be a good argument for a forebay. But at this point, with the intensity of that watercourse, it would really be somewhat of a disruption of the watercourse to introduce the forebay, and it would have to be rather large to quiet for what's there. It would
Velocities.
take up like half the pond at least.
Very good. Well, thank you for that answer. Just have 2 more points.
Sure.
Is there a time of the year, a season or so that's best for dredging and draining of that pond with an eye toward protecting the aquatics and things of that nature?
So at this time of year, things are more mobile. People will look at the low flow periods as potentially good, but there can also be disruptions in the watercourse that way. It's very appropriate in the spring once the amphibian cycles through. But I think at this point, with everything having mobility, the dredging operation tends to move things. Whereas if it were later fall, you'd have turtles could be burrowed in the mud, and there may be more impacts to things that are trying to overwinter. So getting into the spring period would actually be a pretty good time for us the next couple of months to do.
Very good. Thank you for thinking of that. And then finally, we have any concern about any downstream effects of any of this? Looks like you've planned pretty well for sedimentation erosion controls. Anything that strikes you as unusual about the project that could impact any of the down gradient downstream?
So that's an important part of our piece is water quality. So we're looking at measuring turbidity NTUs on the outflow, measuring the ambient NTU in situ, and we're doing clarity checks. So we're doing a variety of different things. We've typically been able to maintain 40 to 50 NTU background on the water quality while we're in operation, and our discharge is generally below 40, which is a drinking water standard for clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the water, it comes out of the bag so clear. If I put it in a cup, it would fool you.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other comments, anything? We cannot act on
You
this
cannot
tonight.
act
so,
tonight, no.
We'll
Thank you.
So
pass it along. to
unless
the-
you want to
the
take a
next
site
meeting.
visit, we just carry it over until the
Sure,
next
yeah.
meeting.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
It was a good education.
Thank you again.
There's no one here regarding that.
Okay, if you know everybody here.
I do know that.
Okay, let's move on. Woodridge Office Contractors, 75 Beechwood Road, application for construction of driveway to access site. This is a renewal of a permit.
No, it's not a renewal.
It's a new.
It's a new permit because all of the time frames that the permit could have been
Lapsed.
renewed have been expended.
So there's somebody here
Bruce Schaefer's here.
relative to that? You would-
Hi, my name's Bruce Schaefer. I was born on Sunbrook Road, and then my father built the road, and he built most of the houses on Sunbrook, so I played in the pond quite a bit.
I guess this is a small town, right? If you would take us through what you're proposing.
Could I ask that everybody speak a little bit into the mic? I'm having trouble hearing,
Okay.
mostly you, but
Okay.
as well.
When we purchased the piece of land, it came, part of the contingency was that it had this approval, which was going to be transferred. Is my mic on? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So when we purchased the property, it had this approval, and we had it transferred to us and extended. And it's still, I don't think it runs up until 2 months or something. But I figured I'd come and try to get it extended, and when I talked to Christine, she checked, and I guess there's only a certain time period that you can have the permit. So she said to reapply, and basically, it's the same plan. It's not a new plan. It's what's been approved already and was approved, and I'm just asking for an extension so I have a right-of-way with an approved plan.
So just to clarify, it's not an extension. This permit has been valid for the total of 14 years that it could have been, and so it will expire in June, so he's requesting a new permit to take place, the
So-
one that will be expiring.
So Chris, are you not saying that that this is something we're going to review, or that would ordinarily now be reviewed anew? Is that what you're?
This is for you to review anew.
Yes, I
It's
think
a
that
new-
was
it's a
important
new
to state
permit.
for
I'm just trying
commissioners.
to clarify, it's not an extension because it can't be renewed. It will expire in June, and so this permit, should you choose to issue it, would replace the existing permit that's been in place for 14 years.
Why not just build a driveway before this permit expires?
Well, it's a couple months, number one. Number two, the plan that you have, I put out the bid. It's extremely expensive, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the land at this point. I'm not building a house there. So to put in the driveway,
It's just a new permit for the possibility.
right, so that for the piece of
I
land,
understand.
I'm not building a house, or I don't have any plans or anything like that.
So the driveway appears to go through a wetlands area, is that correct? It looks like there's,
Mr. Schaefer, can you hear the chairman?
Yeah, it was, I've looked at the plan before, and I actually spoke to, I guess, one of the neighbors before the meeting, and there were a lot of concerns when, I guess, the original owner was David Reese, and he had presented it, and then it sounds like there was been adjustments to it, and then it was approved. So, it seems, I'm also, a developer, a builder, so I've been in the business my whole life, so I have read the plan. It seems like a pretty extensive approval of that plan to, I guess you're retaining the water in galleys and putting it to detention ponds, and I've never got an official quote, but I know it's going to be extremely expensive to put it in. But, as I said, I have a piece of land with an approved right-of-way, which could be a driveway that was approved. And I was just looking to get it extended, but I was not able to do that.
Mr.
So the
Chairman,
short answer to your question is yes, there is a wetlands that's crossed.
at least one.
I guess, two questions, at least, from my standpoint. I don't know the extent of those existing wetlands, if they are even existing today, or if they have expanded. So I'm wondering if we should have this area reflagged. I presume that the wetlands flags are not there any longer after 14 years.
And I fully
And-
agree with that, fully
and-
agree with that.
And second of all, I certainly would want to have the
The site.
plan reviewed by our engineer, town engineer, on that.
This one had been.
There was
Brilliant.
extensive review when this was done originally.
But that was 14 years ago.
The
Thanks.
houses on both sides are the same.
Things change.
But that's your choice. I mean, if you want to send it off to the consulting engineer, we can do that.
I think it should be reviewed.
You know, I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, that we would benefit from an engineer's review, assuming it was reviewed already, and I think that might be something the planning and zoning.
Planning
Might-
and zoning will not be reviewing this.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that's important to know. So, all right, then let's reserve that for our motion, Mr. Chair. One other thing I'd like to do, so I'd like to echo your concern about the wetland flags, which circumstances on the ground change, and the deterioration of the flags is probably certain by this time. So we'd like to know exactly where the wetland boundaries are, let's say, so we can give your plan a proper consideration. That's number one. And before I could give your plan a proper consideration too, I'd like to site inspect the property and see what is happening out there with my own eyes. Tell me, have you spoken with an engineer or so lately about this? Do you intend to have an engineer, somebody come and present this at a subsequent hearing, which it sounds like there will be?
No, I was not planning to go much further. I looked for more open space. My wife wanted to buy this just to have space. So the money I put into this is that it's just additional money that I don't know if it's ever going to be useful for me or not.
Fine, thank you.
The area of concern is just this wetlands area. I don't see any wetlands out beyond that one section. Is there anything out here? Oh, yeah, this is area. So out here, we're not.
Well, check your third page too, which has some further detail. That's really unable to correlate how this third page overlays the first page, so.
The third page, this is a very large tract of property. It's about 35 acres. So the third page shows you the entire tract, which is owned. The first page is only showing you, when you look at the third page, up to where you see two stone walls that parallel each other on the third page. So on the first page, those two stone walls are shown. So the first page is only showing you the area coming in from Beecher Road up to where those two stone walls are.
So the wetlands on the third page is beyond.
So there are extensive wetlands that are shown on the bigger part, but what you're dealing with is the wetland, which is, there's a smaller wetland pocket almost where the flag comes up into where the stone walls are, and then there are wetlands which are down at the very beginning, adjacent to Beecher Road.
But, Chris, why can't I find those two stone walls on page one?
Which is what page one are you talking about?
So it's interesting, so, I mean, we also,
Oh, here's more wetlands here.
yeah, so, it's even like a brook crossing. So I'm not sure, so yeah, I think it's important for us to get out there, and Mr. Schaefer, I'd like to talk to you, so you might want to respond, so let's get you on the record. And,
I think the flagging of the wetland was for the driveway. So that was only the flagging they did, because I don't know if they ever, I don't know the history of what David Reese was trying to do, but did he come in for Chris, did he ever come in to build a house?
He never came, no,
Yeah,
the only
so-
thing he ever came in for was the driveway construction.
Right, so
That
I
is
think that
noted.
was the only wetlands that I think I've talked to the engineer before.
So, Mr. Schaefer, I guess here's my concern.
Yeah.
I hate to add to your expense and your effort here, but if we're going to have a useful site inspection, which I think would be important, we're probably going to want to know where the center line of that driveway is.
The center line of
This-
the driveway.
of the proposed driveway, so we could walk down it and see exactly where you intend to make these crossings and where these disturbances are going to take place. So I will tell you, I will not be comfortable if all we're going to see when we turn up there is wetland flags without any indication of where the driveway is going to go. So that would be an integral part of our observations out there.
There's not much walkable area there. I've walked it before. It's pretty overgrown. And the neighbor, which is, they're present, their driveway is marked, and it's not too difficult to figure out where you're gonna walk down the center line. I mean, I could mark the center line. That's not a problem. But I mean, you know, it's pretty simple. If you look at it with the properties around, everything is pretty designated.
Well, we have to look at it with a little more sharpened eye from a regulator standpoint. So I understand where you're coming from as a property owner. You've lived with the property, you know what you want to do, this and that, but, so we're kind of coming at it from, without any prior knowledge. And I don't know what the prior commission considered, you know, so.
Would you like me to have their file and then you can review that?
Perhaps, let's talk about that after. So that's something that I'd like to see, as I said, is to understand where these disturbances are gonna be.
Yeah, you should definitely look at the other file, and you should see, I think there was several plans that were drawn, it sounds like, and then there were many considerations, because the neighbors had concerns, and then they were addressed, and then the plan was approved.
That's fine. The neighbors' concerns are not part of our jurisdiction. We're concerned with the wetland concerns, so whatever neighbor input happened really probably isn't gonna be all that germane to our determination. So again, I hate to ask you, but, you know, I've been on hundreds of site inspections on a few commissions now, and, you know, we've requested people to machete down a path so we could get through these areas. So just so you understand what perhaps is an applicant's burden under the circumstances, so that you'd want to help us so that we could really evaluate your proposal so you get the proper outcome.
Yeah, that's fine. No
I
problem.
appreciate that.
Whatever.
Thank you.
So, we couldn't act on this anyway, but.
You can't act on it tonight anyway because it's got wetland crossings involved. But you do have some of the neighbors who, whether you want to hear them or not, are here to voice concerns that they may have, which is part of your consideration because they're wetlands concerns.
Yes, although this is not a hearing, but we would like to hear from the
Right.
neighbors.
Before we site inspect, yeah, we'll want to know.
Yeah, and I think also, well, we want to review the material that we already have. So we'll do that, but let's hear from the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
All right, thank you.
My name is Bill Goslin. I live at number 79 Beecher Road since 1981, and thank you for hearing my concerns. So I did go through the process the last time with the Reese family, and when this proposal that you have in front of you, that was satisfactory to myself, to my neighbor on the other side, who cannot attend tonight, out of town. But I just want to reiterate the concerns. So the right-of-way, as you could see between the black lines of your map, is 20 feet wide. So this proposal calls for a driving surface that is 15 feet wide. and that is in note number 2.
Number one.
Number 1.
One and two.
Thank you. 11 feet is paved and with a 2-foot wide shoulder on each side. That would leave 2.5 feet on either side for a slope to support the driveway. But there are some low dips in the land, and so I was wondering, is 2.5 feet adequate to have a slope to support that driveway? That was my concern last time, or would there end up filling part of my property, sort of thereby annexing it? And the other was with water dispersal. So that is your jurisdiction, and that's for you to ascertain if you have another inspection. There are no remaining markers. I did walk through there today. There's no longer a fence as originally demarked, but there are 5 remaining fence posts, so it should be easy enough for a surveyor to determine the straight 20 feet, the center, and so it's just the proposal. So the Reese family promised that they could keep this entire paving project within their 20 feet with no encroachment. It calls for silt fences and a check dam. So they said that those silt fences would also be within the 20 feet. I have a hard time visualizing how that could be achieved. But if it could be achieved as stated, I would have no objection. He purchased the land, he's entitled to his driveway. So that's really the gist of it, and I would come at another time, but I support the plan if he could do it within the 20 feet. The men, material, and machines. And that seems fair enough to me. So if you would just have a look at the wetland, it does seem very wetter today. My shoes were definitely squishing.
Which wetland?
The one at the end of my driveway. That they
At
have,
Beecher? At Beecher?
At Beecher, yes. It's to the left of this plan, and it's pretty wet.
Well, I will tell you, that's something that I'm going to focus on is what's going to, how does the applicant intend to traverse this wetland right at Beecher Road?
Yep.
Because my concern is fragmentation of this wetland area. We're going to isolate this small area from the larger area. You know, I'm going to have, I will consider that maybe that area, based on what I see, maybe that needs to be culverted so that we could avoid that fragmentation as a term of art in the circumstance. So I appreciate your observations.
Thanks. Good. I appreciate you giving me the chance to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. So I think it's appropriate still to have review the flagging and also have this reviewed again by
So you
engineering.
want to refer it to your consulting engineer?
The concern about fracturing the wetlands is a concern, and depending on what we see in those wetlands, we may do some other things.
Well-
Just some other-
So can we schedule this for a site inspection, Mr. Chair?
Well,
I'm sorry, go
You
ahead.
need the driveway center line staked.
Yes,
You want the wetlands flagged.
yes.
They can only access onto their property. They'd have no right, this is only 20 feet wide, to access onto the neighbor's property. So I'm just letting you know, they can show you where the wetlands may cross the potential
Okay.
driveway, but they do not have the right to access onto their neighbor's property. So you're gonna have to leave a little bit of time for the driveway center line to get staked, and also to have somebody go out there and
Wetland flag.
do the wetland flagging.
Thank you.
And you also have to be mindful of the fact that it's been wet
Yes.
And sogginess does not necessarily always indicate a wetland,
Wetlands,
since I
correct.
live on top of a hill and pretty soggy. at the
That's,
moment.
that's why we need a flag, yeah.
And there are 3 areas that you.
There's 3, yep.
Yes. One of them's a brook.
And just note that when you do look at the larger plan, that this is the access to the buildable portion of the property. There is no real other way to get in. Coming, while it has frontage over on Pease Road and whatnot, there's an extensive wetland that would have to be crossed.
Coming in
And
from-
there's also the
from
power
Pease Road,
lines
yeah.
that are there.
Well, just to respond to that directly, Chris, and I know the applicants in the room, is I don't see that this can't be done. But I think it needs to be done in accordance with our regulations and
And
as to the commission's
perfectly
desires, yeah. So,
I was here the last time it was approved, probably none of you were. So I
Right.
remember how much time was spent going through this and how many plans went through. But certainly you need to be educated to make a decision, so that's not an issue.
And there's some extensive engineering.
Yeah,
This is just not
No, this was an
scrape it off and
extensive
pave it.
project.
so should we ask the applicant how much time he might like to engage his professionals so that we could have some idea of when would be a useful time to schedule a site inspection?
I would like you to go through the records to see what's available already for you. And then, I am in no hurry here, so, I agree, it's probably very wet right now and not really the time to do it. What, Chris, I never, somebody asked me before about constructing.
You should come up here when you're talking, because they can't pick you up back there.
I'm curious if I went in today, I could get a permit to build this driveway, because it's still.
You have a permit
No, so-
right now.
Right, so if I wanted to, because
You
you
would
asked
need-
me about the driveway.
You would need a curb cut from the Public Works Department, and then we have to look at the terms of your existing permit, understanding that the work would all have to be completed within the time frame of that existing permit being valid. And work would have to stop as soon as that permit.
Oh, so,
was
so
finished.
you have to do it within the two.
That's the whole point of having a permit, yes.
So if you went in and got you got your building
You-
permission, you'd have to complete it within
You
the 2
need
months.
to complete it within the time frame that the permit is active. Otherwise, I would be bound to shut you down.
I see. Okay, I'm just trying to understand what the process is here. So, yeah, I would say certainly review your files. I haven't even gone through the files to see what it was. And I wasn't aware of the process that went on last time. All I know is it was an approved driveway, and it, when I looked at it, it seemed quite extensive. And I saw the silt fences that they put in. That was the first time I've ever heard about the 2.5 feet. I wasn't aware of it, but I'm sure that if the past owner was able to do it, whoever I hire, I'm gonna do this, I'll figure it out, so.
But, I just, I hate to interrupt you, but I just wanted to keep us focused. We're really talking now about the desire to schedule the site inspection of your property. We wanted to give you enough time to have the property prepared in advance of our visit. How much time do you think you would need to engage your professionals if that's what you chose to do? And
I didn't ask anybody, so I have no answer to that. I don't know what their backup is, how long it would take, how much it's
So-
gonna cost, who I'm gonna hire.
Basically, what they're looking for is to have the wetlands reflagged and the center line of the driveway, which you said you could flagged. That's what you're looking for the site visit, right?
yeah, just, you are a builder. I mean, I just,
Yeah, our company is Schaefer Home Inspections. We actually went into home inspections, and I built properties in Woodbridge.
My concern is, I guess, the reliability of your staking. We'd be relying on it as a legal conclusion.
Well, we could look at the maps, and I would find identification that we could all identify, whether it's a catch basin or a driveway. I even talked to the neighbors. There might be who knows, a concrete monument somewhere, and if I was the one who was going to find it for you, I'd make sure I could make it extremely clear, showing you all the points that I mean, it's not a very big space we're talking about. We're talking about, I think it's 20 feet? Is it
20 feet wide.
20, do you know if there is marking that on your property?
I'm not,
There are just 5 fence posts.
There's what?
5 fence posts that are on the neighbor's property line, so it'd be 20 feet from that. But you would need to survey it and stake it before you could determine a center line.
Are the property posts on the plan? Do they
No.
show? No. Okay, so,
there's no monuments indicated on this plan, and there's no iron pins indicated.
There is, I saw an iron pin on page 3, but it didn't, I could not locate it on page 1. So, you know,
I don't know, I'd have to look at it, I'd get back to you and then
Let-
figure it out. I mean, of course, I'm not gonna be guessing, I don't wanna be guessing on anything. I'm gonna show you something, I want it to be exact. So,
'cause right, 'cause,
yeah, so I understand that.
So,
I
Chris,
cer-
what could we do administratively? Let's say that we're not going to touch this for at least another month, maybe a month and a half. Is there something we need to do administratively to either
No,
keep the application?
the application doesn't have to get acted on by you for 65 days from its receipt date, which is this evening.
That's the
Should
question.
Mr. Shaver choose to give you an extension of time, he can then give you another 65 days. So at the moment, you're within your time frame.
So could we resolve to pass this matter to next month and check the status of?
Yes, that's certainly, we'll continue it,
W-
sure.
Was Robert Blythe on the committee when this was approved?
Yes, it was. Yes, he was.
So I think he might be somebody who might be knowledgeable about this also. So I have no problem waiting till the next month, and I could get some information about some of the things you're asking for, and then I have a better idea of what we're talking about.
I have one other question. I'm not sure there's an answer to it. There are lots of improvements along with this driveway, cleanouts and things. Who's going to maintain that? How will those be maintained? Who,
I'm not constructing it right now, so I have no plan to maintain it or anything. So that kind of a question, I'd have to look at it. But I suppose the person that owns the land and builds the driveway is going to be required to maintain it. You know, there's not going to be an independent party that comes in to maintain the driveway.
And, you know, we could reserve that issue for discussion for when this
Yeah.
comes up for
Yeah.
like a full consideration by
Right.
this commission.
but I think
Good point.
we'll need to do that. But again, I want to review what's been done and also any new findings.
Want to ask for a motion to continue
You
this to
don't
next
need a
month?
motion,
Motion.
you just
Then we'll just-
table it until the next meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you.
No more thing before we try to decide.
So the next thing that had to get added to your agenda formally is what I sent to you earlier today, which is Regional Water Authority. It was a letter submitted by Ron Walters from the Regional Water Authority, who is here. And this is relative to work related to their pipe maintenance. And this is a request for a decision by the commission for a finding that this is, what did I call it? A non-regulated activity? Yeah.
Right.
So do we need a motion or anything to add it?
You should add it to your agenda formally, yeah.
So can we have a motion to add this to our agenda?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 5-4, no abstentions, no. Okay. If you'll give us an overview of the project?
Good evening. Ron Walters, Senior Environmental Analyst with the Regional Water Authority, 90 Sergeant Drive, New Haven. This project involves clearing an area over our raw water pipelines that feed the West River Water Treatment Plant. This is, I wouldn't say it's an emergency project, but we want to expedite it for several reasons. One of them is our capital budget. Moving forward, our capital budget right now is pretty much packed with the replacement of the Whitney Dam, work on our lead service line project that we're going to be required by the DEP, and also treatment issues with PFAS that we're going to have to spend money on. So this project came about a couple of months ago. Somebody was out on our property and saw a tree that had fallen over, and the root ball pretty much ripped up a hole, and everybody realized that if it was about 15 feet to the left, it would have taken out the Lake Dawson raw water line, and we would have lost that service to Lake Whitney, to the West River system. So we started looking at this problem and decided that we needed to clear cut the trees 25 feet width over our raw water lines for improved maintenance, inspection, and to make sure that we don't lose water line due to the vegetation, the trees being, if there was a hurricane or something like that, old age of the trees falling over. It was decided because of our capital project being so tight that we freed up capital money for this year. Our fiscal year begins in June 1st, so this project was expedited by our engineering department, and as a courtesy, we decided that we needed to notify Woodbridge Inland Wetlands because we were doing work along the lake shoreline and crossing a couple of the Sargent River and a couple of smaller streams.
Is this pipeline above ground?
It's below ground. So we have raw water pipes under that connect Lake Glen to the treatment plant, Lake Dawson to the treatment plant, Lake Watrous to the treatment plant. And our concern is because the vegetation has been growing over these things, that a large tree in a windstorm or something, if it got uprooted, that the roots could actually dislodge the pipe and cause.
The tree's close to the pipe?
Yes.
Got it. So you would clear cut you're not going to uproot the?
No. Our whole plan right now is to cut the trees, remove the trees, and chip the brush. And then we would mow that 25-foot area maybe twice a year. And we would restore any of the area with a grass seed mix.
So there would be vegetation
Yes.
over the area? Any questions? We don't have to act on this, do we?
Yes, you do.
You do.
You submitted this under section 4.1E of your regulations, where
Right.
you are given information, and then you have to make a determination that it's permitted as of right, in this case, because it's relative to the maintenance of water pipes for a water authority. So you just have to make that finding.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I like the plan. I think the RWA is historically been an excellent steward of its properties, all for the public benefit. So this seems to have a public safety, public benefit aspect to it too. I like the environmental consideration of not uprooting these trees and just cutting to minimize the erosion potential for a project of this scape. So, my recommendation would be to approve this project.
I only have one question. How did you get the photos?
We have aerial photographs.
You can get them too from the DEEP website.
Oh, I never looked.
Yeah, area from every decade.
Oh, very nice.
They're on our town website for every 3 years.
Through the GIS, yeah.
But you have to know to look.
That's
Yeah.
true, you do.
So we need to have a motion on this?
You make a motion to find for section 4.4 that no, this is indeed a non-regulated activity.
4.0. So,
Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to approve this project pursuant to section 4.1 of the regulations, that this is not a regulated activity.
The section 4.4 is where you actually have to make the finding, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, it says that the use is allowed under 4.1E,
Right,
and then we act under 4.4, you say?
yes.
Very good. So that's the motion, that we approve pursuant to our authority under 4.4.
second?
Second.
Josh seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
5 ayes. That's
Thank
it.
you.
5 ayes.
Chainsaws away.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That
Mr.
was,
Walters.
that was a short time that I got to see you.
That was, yes.
I haven't seen
Good to see
Ron
you,
in a
Ron.
long time.
Good to see you.
And I think this is probably my first in-person meeting since COVID.
Oh, no, congratulations.
Yeah, they've been Hamden, Cheshire, North Branford. They've having, mixed meetings, so it saves me a lot of travel time and effort to get to those meetings.
We like
Thanks.
to see you in person.
There is, you lose something when you don't have people seeing them face to face, so.
Yes.
Thank you very much, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Ron. Take care.
Chris, I'll keep you
Yeah, Ron and I worked
Yeah, that would be fine. Just let me know when
13
you
years
start,
now.
you're starting, and then that way if somebody's calling, I know.
for
Yeah,
projects.
that'd be
There's a
great.
lot to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron.
There's an item under old business,
There is?
receipt and appropriate.
It's just, no, I
Or is
just
that-
didn't put a space between old business and receipt and appropriate action regarding correspondence. So
So
there
no-
is no old business.
Okay, so
Now you have to have Jean work her magic on my minutes.
no,
No
how about
enforcement.
anything from our enforcement officer?
I went out, okay, so there's two things. I went
Two
out to the firehouse and they're working on their project. So that's what they're doing, is
Okay.
the extension that you guys approved.
And it's within the bounds of, it just,
And I noted to them that it would have been very nice if they'd called me before they started work, which they hadn't. And then the other one is 106 Seymour
Seymour
Road.
Road.
We'd received a complaint from one of the neighbors, or concern from one of the neighbors that the erosion control seemed to be down. I went out and I met with the contractor, and we found that where he had put the swale wasn't where it was shown on the approved plans. And he has since met with John Paul Garcia, so they're restaking where it has to go. They had added in a footing drain, a curtain drain, and they had that daylighting, and that's gonna get tied into what was shown on the plans for a roof drain, and that will feed over into the swale, which was originally approved, and then the swale will stop 15, 20 feet above the man-made pond.
Chris, is that the property I wrote about last week?
Yep.
That may be one of the most hydrologically active properties I've seen in town.
Yeah.
There's so much happening there. It should be seen.
I don't know what you're gonna do to see it, but
Well,
you're
I think
welcome to
we should
go
probably
out.
see. I think there's a lot to see there, but I plan to come into the office and take a look at the file.
Okay, you're more than welcome to.
Thanks.
we're down to.
Other than that, I should let you know that I have been going out periodically to look at the pond.
The pond.
Oh, thanks.
And it raises and drops depending on whether or not we've had 2 to
Rain.
4 inches of rain. And when it rains, it goes up, and when it doesn't rain, it drops back down. It'll be interesting to see, once the leaves start to leaf out, if that has an impact on where the pond level is. I would suspect that it might, because at that point we'll have some transpiration, so that the water table will naturally be dropping because of what's being lost through the leaves, so we'll keep an eye on that. But Every time I've been out, the pipe underneath the driveway, depending on how much water is head watering it from the pond side, has been running, and whatnot. So there is no, while there is material on top of the drainage device, it doesn't seem to be having any impact on what's going through the pipe, because that would be a lower V-neck where it comes in. I've looked at, there's two sources of water coming into the pond that are from road drainage, other than just normal stuff that's flowing in there. And clearly, there's road drainage that feeds in both from Hunter's Ridge, as well as Foxton Way. So, they're armored, so there isn't erosion per se coming into the pond from those points. But there is definitely water that flows, and again, that diminishes when the water has dropped. So, between myself and Bob, we've been, I think the neighbors are starting to wave at us when they're taking their walks, because they're
Yeah, thanks for
knowing who we
monitoring
are.
that.
But, that's all I got on that. I think that's all I've got at the moment.
Good, thank you.
Minutes.
The minutes. Any-
Jean?
Yeah, I've got a couple of tiny little things
I
and formatting questions, so I can turn them over to you again.
I have one question, well, maybe you already got it, on the
Or maybe
page 2, down on the 2 bullets, down lower, the permit is approved subject to standard and conditions.
I
S-
suggest
Maybe
take an and out.
Yeah, it should just be standard conditions.
Standard conditions, okay. I don't know, didn't know if it was standards and conditions. Okay, good, that's all I know.
Good eye. Good eye.
Any other business? If not, a motion to adjourn?
Oh, you're gonna move to do the minutes?
Oh, we gotta have a motion to.
Yep.
Motion to approve the minutes.
With Jean's
With
corrections.
Jean's corrections.
Yes, so moved.
I'm so,
I move to
Oh,
accept
a
the
second?
minutes with my
Second.
corrections.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
5 ayes. That's all we need.
Some good sight, that's some good sight, some real farsightedness.
Anything
Now you
else?
can adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Don't know.
So moved. And a second. So we are adjourned at roughly
8:27.
8:27.